you for being a good audience. I'm so glad that you're here and that we were able to make this work. It was supposed to happen tomorrow, but with our weather that's happening, he's from Oklahoma City, and we didn't want him having to drive. Right. So, he's going to introduce himself. Good job, guys.
Okay, so how many of us in here watch YouTube? Right, like all of us. So I am a Catholic YouTuber. I have a channel called Kid Catholic, where I post a different Catholic video every week, and I've been doing that for about over 5 years. And then I go and give talks to a whole bunch of different schools and churches across the country. I came here a couple of years ago, and yeah, I'm really happy to be back. So. What I want to talk to you guys about today is a very simple concept, and that is friendship. Specifically, a best friend. Who in here can think of someone who is their friend? Raise your hand, right? Maybe they're in this room, maybe they're not. Who in here can think of people who are their best friend? Right? Most of us. Because the thing is, all of us have, for the most part, friends, right? And we have a best friend, but think about it. Did you become best friends or friends at all with that person just by talking to them one time and then never again? No, right? You have to talk to them a lot. You have to hang out with them. You have to want to be with them. And I can't just say, I want to be your friend, so I'm going to sit here and talk to you. I'm going to have a conversation, and then anything that you say back, I'm just not going to listen. It doesn't work like that, right? That's weird. That doesn't make any sense. And it's the same thing. You have to talk back, right? I have to listen. We have to have a conversation. And then we have to spend time together. Did you become best friends with someone, or did you become super close with that person just by talking to them one time and never again? No, right? You have to talk to that person a lot. And the thing is, it's the same thing with God. Sometimes we can picture God as this incredible thing that we could never think of even coming close to building a relationship with. And while he is, two big words, omnipotent and omniscient. That means all-knowing and all-powerful. He is someone who wants to be our best friend and who we should want to be our best friend. And it all starts by talking to him, right? How do we talk to God? Just yell it out. Prayer. Exactly. We talk to God through prayer. We have the ability. Who in here wishes they could just, with a snap of their fingers, talk to their best friend whenever they wanted? Right? I bet all of us would want that. It's the same thing with God. We can talk to God literally whenever we want. Whenever. We can always talk to God. And he is someone who can be and who should be our absolute best friend. And that's more than a friend, right? We can acknowledge there's a difference between best friend and friend. A best friend is someone we talk to all the time. And so it's the same thing with a normal human relationship. It's the same thing with the normal human friendships. Now, we have prayer. What are some other ways we can get closer to God? Yeah?
In Mass.
At Mass, that's really good, yes? You're going to say at Mass, right? That's a big answer, yes?
In the Bible.
In the Bible, yeah?
Adoration.
Adoration, bam, you guys are getting it, right? We have so many ways to get close to God. Because, think about adoration, right? Adoration, we get to be there physically with actually God whenever, right? Spend actual time with him. Who in here would rather... And I know that this is not entirely the same thing because Jesus is everywhere. God is always with us. But I sort of like to think about it like this. Who would rather, actually be with their best friend or just, be on the phone with them? Right? We'd rather, actually be in physical person with our best friend. Right? For the most part, I think so. And adoration, we have the ability to be physically there with Jesus. Because he's there. At Mass, another great answer. We have so many ways to build a friendship with Christ. But before I start getting into all the ways, we just need to think why. Why should we build a friendship with Christ? Can anybody come up with some answers? Yeah?
Because if you don't have a relationship with Christ, then you're not going to do as well as you would with one, I guess.
That's a really good one. Yep.
You'll go to heaven.
You'll go to heaven. Bam. We'll do one more. Yep.
Because you would want to be friends with your Creator, right? So that's why you should build a relationship with God.
Exactly. You want to be friends with your Creator. You want to get to heaven. Guys, why are we here? What's the ultimate goal? It's to get to heaven, right? It's to get ourselves to heaven and to get as many other people to heaven as possible. Now, that can sound like a big task. Because we hear about the saints. We hear about all of these people who have gotten to heaven, right? We can probably think of some favorite saints of ours, and a lot of them have absolutely incredible, crazy stories, stuff that we could like never even think about. And then we think, wait, I have to get to heaven, I have to become a saint, and then I have to get other people to become a saint too. Sometimes it's just overwhelming. And we can think, well, I'm just, a kid. What can I do? But guys, the thing is, when we're building a relationship with Christ, when we're working through prayer, we are given so many gifts. We have the ability to get to heaven. And we don't have to do a whole bunch of extraordinary, just crazy things. We can, maybe that's what we're called to do, but we can also live a simple life, just pray on a day-to-day basis and achieve that goal of getting to heaven. Because guys, we make getting to heaven so much more complicated than it is. I mean, really, we think about all the different steps we have to take. We think about everything that we have to do. Ultimately, it's just about growing closer to Christ and following him and obeying him. So who in here has heard of St. Tarcisius? A couple of people. Okay, so I want to explain the story of St. Tarcisius. I mentioned sometimes we feel like we really can't do much, right? We really can't get other people to heaven because we're just kids. Well, I want to explain the story of St. Tarcisius. So St. Tarcisius, he grew up in a time of very heavy Christian persecution, okay? And he was 12 years old. Christians were being imprisoned for no other reason other than the fact that they were Christian. And so I talked about the Eucharist, right? The Eucharist is such a great gift that we have. It's the body of Christ. And these prisoners, they couldn't receive Jesus because they're in prison, right? They had no way of getting Jesus, and that's not fair. So Christians had tried to sneak the Eucharist into these prisoners time and time again, and every time they got caught. Well, St. Tarcisius was just 12 years old, and he knew nobody would suspect a kid of trying to sneak the Eucharist into prisoners. So he stood up, he volunteered himself. He said that he would do it. On his way to deliver the Eucharist, he was holding it tight, right? It's a great gift. On his way there were some boys who weren't Christian, and St. Tarcisius knew this. And St. Tarcisius typically plays with those boys, right? He typically spends time with them. But he knew that they weren't Christian, and he's on a mission, right? He has to get this Eucharist to the prisoners. He's not going to stop and play with them. And the boys knew that was weird. They knew that there was something off about that. And they ended up finding the Eucharist that he had, and they ended up stoning him to death. That just took a turn for the dark. I know. I'm not saying that that's going to happen to us. Let me get to my point, okay? As he was dying, he was holding the Eucharist. And really, what's incredible is that's what he cared about, right? He cared about the Eucharist. He wanted the Eucharist to be kept safe. He didn't want these boys to get their hands on it because it's God, right? Treating God unfairly isn't right. After St. Tarcisius had died, the Eucharist had disappeared entirely. And a guard who was watching the whole thing nearby later converted to Christianity because of it. I don't say that story to say, guys, we're going to be martyrs, right? That's not what I'm trying to say, okay? What I am trying to say is that it doesn't matter how young we are to stand up for our faith. Because being Catholic isn't easy. Who in here thinks there are some hard things about being Catholic? Right? I think we can all agree on that. And I'm not saying that it's going to be near physical persecution or like St. Tarcisius endured, but there is going to be some stuff that's difficult. But no matter how young we are never too young to take those steps to get to heaven. In fact, we have an advantage, right? Because think about it, as young people, because guys, I don't know about you, I'm really not looking forward to being an adult and having to worry about taxes and stuff. That's all confusing. I don't understand it. I'm not really excited for that. So we have an advantage right now because as kids, we have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to start praying right now. I'm going to start building a relationship with God right now so that by the time I'm an adult, by the time things may get harder, I already have a great relationship with him. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
But we need to take advantage of that opportunity. We need to hop on it. We need to say, okay, I'm going to start building this relationship with him, and it comes down to prayer. Now, sometimes starting a daily prayer life is difficult. Trust me, I know, okay? Because more than any other generation, we have so many distractions, right? So many things to keep our mind occupied. We have YouTube, we have our who in here has a cell phone or an iPad or something, right? Most of us, right? So we have these distractions, and that's not necessarily our fault, right? It's not our fault we have these distractions. But they can sort of slow us down from building a relationship with God. So do you know what I did? Have any of you set an alarm on your iPad or something You know how you can like change the name of your alarm, like title it? I didn't know that for the longest time. Anyway, you can basically like change what you want it to say when it pops up. So I was having a hard time starting a daily prayer life, and I was in the middle of playing video games. Who in here plays 2K? Yeah, a lot of us, right? A lot of guys. Yeah, I was playing 2K. I think this was 2K20. I had a whole my career. I was pretty good. It was my career NBA Finals. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, right, playing 2K, and then I had set that alarm on my phone for a certain time that I was like, okay, at this time I'm going to pray. At this time I'm going to go and I'm going to pray. And I set the name of my alarm as "Go pray right now or I'm disappointed in you." It was like a little sad when I saw it. I was like, man, like chill out. But it worked, right? I saw that. I was like, okay. And then I turned off the Xbox. Better than PlayStation. That's just what I'm saying. And I turned off the Xbox, and I went and I started praying. What we need to do is set aside a certain spot, set aside a certain time, say, okay, I'm going to pray right here. And guys, sometimes why it's so hard for us to start praying is because it's so hard for us to start praying because we try to do it all at once, right? We try to go from maybe not having really a prayer life at all to bam, becoming best friends with God, right? And praying all day, every day. We don't just go from never talking to somebody to talking to that person all the time like that. I mean, maybe in some cases we do, but for the most part, you're going to want to grow that, right? It's going to be more of a gradual thing where you start talking to them more and more and more. Think about your best friend. Can we all agree on that? And so with God, it's the same thing. It's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to, if we have no prayer life at all right now, we're not going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly be able to pray like 5 hours a day, right? But what we can do is take baby steps. Start out with maybe 5 minutes, right? Just 5 minutes of our time to God, and then slowly and slowly grow it. And guys, I'm not just saying this to be a stickler or because it's rules that the Catholic Church makes us follow. I'm saying this because doing this, talking to God more and more, helps us to become friends with Him. And becoming best friends with them helps us to what? Get to heaven, right? It all comes back to starting that daily prayer life, to being able, there are steps here, right? It's a lot simpler than we make it out to being able to get to heaven. Now, I mentioned getting others to heaven as well. And I think that that's something that I want to take a little more time talking about, because sometimes there are some people that we just don't like, right? I mean, for me, it's Kevin Durant. I've had a real issue with Kevin Durant since, you guys are, man, were you guys like really little when he left? Wow, I didn't even think about that. He was my first heartbreak. Anyway, that's besides the point. When Jesus is asked, what are the 2 greatest commandments? He said, love God above all else and love your neighbor as yourself, right? And I don't know about you guys, but for me, I used to always struggle with that love your neighbor one. Because sometimes we just don't like people. There are maybe some people who's annoying, some people who get on our nerves. I'm sure we can all think of someone. But the thing is, we are not called to like everybody. We're called to love everybody, just as much as we do ourselves. The definition of love is to will the good of another, to will the good of that person, right? Loving everybody else doesn't mean that we have to suddenly go and talk to everybody else all the time. Some people we may not want to talk to, and that's okay. I'm not saying be rude and ignore them, but you know what I'm trying to say. We are called to love them, to will their good, to want them to succeed just as much as we do ourselves, because that's what love is. And so, this can sound difficult, right? But what I want to explain is how everything becomes easier once we are best friends with God. Who in here plays with Legos? Or used to or still does, right? I do, right? I used to build this I don't know if you guys have seen it, it's like a huge not Death Star, TIE Fighter looking thing. And that was the hardest thing for me to build, because it was a wing and the thing in the middle. It's like a whole process. Anyway, I would always love to build that. So imagine for a second, okay? Think of your best friend. Imagine your best friend spent a ton of time working on this really awesome Lego build. It looks great. Maybe it's a lot of pieces, right? Maybe it's a TIE Fighter, like I said. Imagine that your best friend built that up. Would you just go and then just okay, knock over the Lego piece first time seeing it? No, right? You think it's cool, right? You want to take care of it. You would maybe help to make sure that nobody else gets its hands on it, because it is that cool. It's the same thing with God, because everybody else, whether you like him or not, is God's creation. Everybody else was built up, was created in God's image and likeness. And so don't you think it's easier to love your best friend's creation than it is to love a stranger's creation? Right? So when we're having a hard time loving other people, think about it like those Legos. Think like, well, if I'm close to God and I know that God created everybody else, that he loves everybody else, then who am I to hate anybody, right? Who am I to not love anybody? Doesn't that sort of make it easier loving other people, seeing it like that? Seeing it as, guys, we're all God's creation, and God should be our best friend. And again, it's not going to come overnight, okay? Again, this all leads back to getting to heaven and getting as many other people to heaven as possible. And sometimes that's done just through kindness. Now, I want to do something here. I've mentioned getting to heaven. It can sometimes get a little bit confusing because we're all called to heaven. Anybody in heaven is a saint, whether they are named a saint by the Catholic Church on earth or not. So the saints that are named a saint by the Catholic Church, we know definitively that they're in heaven. That's why they're named it by the Catholic Church. But then there are some people who are probably saints and probably in heaven, just haven't been named that by the Catholic Church. And so when we're seeing all these other like saint stories, and we're thinking, oh my goodness, I have to go out and I have to preach to all these countries right now. It can be very simple things to allow us to get to heaven, because once we get to heaven, we're a saint. So here's what I want us to do. Imagine how cool it would be to be like in 150 years, okay? People, like before they say your name, they have to say saint before it. That's like an official title. I think that's cool. So here's what I want us to do, okay? I'm going to count down from 3, okay? And after I get to 1, I want you to yell your name, but with saint before it. Okay, can we do that? Can we do that? Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1. Saint! Isn't that awesome? Doesn't that have like a nice ring to it? Am I wrong? That's what we're called to be. That's what you're called to be. That name right there is exactly what God wants us to be, to get to heaven. And guys, we overcomplicate it. We think that we have to go through all these different processes, and it's going to be so difficult, and there's no way we can do it. We're only a kid, right? Think about St. Tarcisius, all that he did, as I mentioned earlier. Guys, it comes back to just starting that daily prayer life. Because yes, being Catholic is going to be hard. Nobody said it was going to be easy. And starting that daily prayer life, becoming best friends with God doesn't mean that everything's just going to suddenly be a breeze, but it means that being Catholic is going to be so much easier, that loving others is going to be easier, that loving ourselves as much as God is going to be easier, so that we can achieve that goal of getting to heaven. Amen? Okay. So what I want to do for like the last 10 minutes or so, what I want to do for the last 10 minutes is take some questions. And it can be about anything that I've spoken about, something about my YouTube, something about me giving talks, or really any questions regarding the faith also. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. I can't get to everybody, but we'll see. Yeah.
How much subscribers do you have?
I have almost 6,000 subscribers.
When was the last time you came to this school?
Last time I came to the school was a couple years ago. It would have been like 2019. I'm pretty sure. So it was like 3 years ago. Yes.
How many schools have you gone to?
I have lost track of how many schools I've gone to, but I've been able to go to a lot of different states for it, and so it's been awesome. Yes.
Where do you originally live?
I live in Oklahoma City. Yeah. Yes.
Are you monetizing on YouTube?
No, I'm not. Yes.
My question, wait, can you come back to me?
Yes, I will come back to you. Don't worry. Oh, remind me, I may forget. Yes.
Do you know why we have saints?
Do you know why we have saints? Great question. So the saints, right? When you're talking about saints, do you mean like all the like different stories that we hear of different people who lived? Okay, so we have saints, named saints by the Catholic Church because we know definitively that they're in heaven. And we talk about their story so much because think about it. They were human just like you and I, right? They sinned. When they fell and scraped their knee, it's the exact same pain you and I feel when we fall and scrape our knee, right? They were humans just like you and I. So if we didn't really talk about the saints, if we didn't really bring them up, if we just said, oh, there are people in heaven, then we don't have as many examples of people who were just like you and I, lived through rough times and still got to heaven. And so it'd be a lot more difficult. We think, wait, has anybody even done this before? Have people even managed to get to heaven before, right? But with all of these saints, we have examples, people we can look to, and there's so many that there's going to be some that are a lot like you, and there's going to be some that are a lot like me, right? That we can relate to and sort of help us to get to heaven also. Yes?
What are all the states you have gone to preach?
All the states that I've gone to, dude, I couldn't name them all. Not all of them, but I've been to a lot. The farthest I've gone is New Jersey, but that's been the farthest right now. Yes.
Why did you start making a YouTube channel and talking about God?
Why did I start making a YouTube channel and talking about God? Well, I started it because, like, we all love YouTube, right? I love YouTube. I did it when I was 11. How old are you guys now? Like 9, 10? 10, 11. Okay. Yeah, so I started around your age. I started when I was 11. And I did it because when I looked at a lot of other YouTube channels, like, there were a ton of great ones, right? I'm sure we can name some of our favorite YouTubers. But I wanted, like, one that was very Catholic and that everybody could sit down and just watch, whether they're a kid or adult, whatever it might be. And so I wanted to start it, and so it just kind of started with a video a week, not thinking it would really go anywhere, and then it just grew and grew from there and led to giving talks. So that's the main reason it happened. Yes?
What school did you go to class?
What school do I go to? I go to Mount St. Mary in Oklahoma City. Yes. Yes.
Have you went out of the country?
Have I went out of the country? I haven't to speak yet, but this summer I did get invited to Uganda to speak. So hopefully that still goes through and I can go to Uganda. Yes?
How do your parents support you in doing the videos?
How do my parents support me in doing the videos? Well, my mom's back there and she drove me, so that's nice. But yeah, they support me a lot. My dad watches like every single one. My mom, especially in the video, my mom has a master's in theology, so she's like kind of like smart, knows this stuff. And so when I was initially starting out especially, I just came in thinking like, I already know everything. There's no mistake I could make. I was clearly wrong, right? And she would sort of help me if I made a mistake in something that I said or theologically, like if I said something wrong, she would correct it. But then she's helped me by like I said, bringing me to different speaking engagements. We call her momager, basically been like the manager helping me get different speaking engagements as well. And then like I said, my dad watches like every single video and is super supportive in that way. About how much time? 5 minutes? Okay, I can take. What was that?
Like 4 minutes.
Okay, I can take some more. Yes.
Two things. First thing is, and I just forgot. Can you come back to me?
I will come back. Don't worry. I said I'd come back to you. Yes.
Oh yeah, my question was, since you go to a lot of schools, is every school just like some school and the next one forget about them?
No, I don't that's a good question. For those of you who can't hear, she asked like if I just like go from school to school and then every school is just like the next one I forget about. No, and I'm not going to forget about Marquette and Tulsa either because I really, really like being able to be at this school. So I make sure I remember at least most of them that I can. Yes.
Two things. First thing is, at your school, do like your fellow peers treat you like a celebrity?
At my school, do my fellow peers treat me like a celebrity? That's a good question. Not really, because since I go to, like, I don't know how many people go to the school, but there's 400 of us there. And so for the most part, they, like, mostly all know me personally. And so, I mean, sometimes, like in a joking way, they will, because they're my friend, and they'll just say it. But for the most part, no. There are some, like, I'm a junior now, so there are some people, some grades younger that I spoke to when they were in middle school. And so there's like maybe a little bit of that there, but for the most part, not anymore. That's a really good question.
Second thing, can you tell me your Xbox account username?
My Xbox account username, I can't remember what it was, dude. To be honest, I barely even play it anymore. But if I'm being completely honest, I know it's something to do with Russell Westbrook. I just can't like remember what number it is. Yeah.
What is your name?
My name. Did I never say that? I can't remember. My bad. That's my fault. My name is Kedon. It's like Keaton but with a D. Yeah. Yes.
Have you been to Maryland yet?
Have I been in Maryland yet? I have not. That would be lovely. I can take a couple more. Yeah.
Not including Oklahoma, what's the most common state you've been to talk to children about God?
Not including Oklahoma, the most common state that I've been to. I've probably been to either Kansas or Texas the most. That's not Oklahoma. Yes.
Me?
Yes.
Do you get paid?
Do I get paid? For you two, no, I don't get paid. Yes.
Have you ever been to California?
Okay. I was supposed to go to California, and then there was a little thing called coronavirus, and that wasn't very nice. But I did give like sort of a Zoom talk to a school in California. So I don't know if you would count that. I like to count it just because it's California. I'll take a couple more. Yes.
What was the age and like the full school you ever went to? And what was like your age when you did?
Can you say that again?
Like, what was the full school you ever went to do a talk? And
Oh,
how
like the
old-
biggest school?
Yeah, no, the full school that you ever.
Oh,
did.
first. Okay.
And how old were you? When
I was either 12 or 13, and the first talk that I ever gave was at my own parish to like friends, people who I knew personally, and I was terrified. I was so scared. I like memorized that whole speech in my room beforehand. Yes. Yes.
What type of Xbox do you have?
I'm pretty sure it's just one. I think. I don't know. Yes.
How old are you?
I'm 16, and then we'll do 2 more. So, yes.
Why do you have to go through the process to become a saint?
What was that again? Like, why do you have to go through the process to become a saint? Well, it's a little bit confusing because technically to just be a saint, you don't have to. Anybody in heaven is a saint. However, like the people that we have named saints by the Catholic Church, they go through a process because, like I mentioned to her, like we sort of use the saints as examples, right? We don't want to just assume that someone's in heaven, think that someone's in heaven, and then say, yeah, that person's probably in heaven. We can look at them as an example because we don't fully know, right? So like the whole beatification process, canonization process, well, it may sound confusing and it's like, this is kind of too much. It's all to prove for sure that this person is in heaven. Like there's a certain number of miracles that they need attributed to them after their death to prove that they're in heaven, we need proof of their life, a whole bunch of different things. And that's sort of the reason for it. But again, just because someone isn't named a saint by the Catholic Church on earth, it doesn't mean they aren't a saint. It just means the Catholic Church doesn't definitively know. Does that make sense? That was a really good question. Okay, I'll take one more. Yes.
Do you go to other schools that don't speak English?
Do I go to other schools that don't speak English? No, I don't, thank goodness, because I would not be able to give a talk in another language. I'm working on my Spanish though. I have an A in Spanish 3, so maybe I can someday. Okay, so I want to just like close this out in prayer really quickly, and then on your way out, you can grab a card and give that card to your parents, and then the pen. Does that work? Okay. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Jesus, thank you for allowing us to be here with you today. Help us to grow and to begin a daily prayer life, to be our motivation to start praying day after day so that we may become your absolute best friend and get into the kingdom of heaven as we pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Spirit. Amen. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
So he is on YouTube, obviously, but also after school at 3:25, if you're driving home or if you get home around that time, he's on the radio. So he's on 94.9, and he does a 5-minute like little religion talk to kind of set you up for your evening at home. So that's pretty cool too. So I will send that to teachers so you can send that out as well. And then there's also on your way out, so not yet, but they are giving you pins so you can maybe write some notes to your best friend Guy, and cards with all his contact information and his channel and all of that. So thank you for being such great listeners. Happy Catholic Schools Week. I've been praying for you guys all week, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. So listen to your teachers for dismissal.